Track Talk is back, baby. Hello and welcome back to Track Talk for the 2022 season of motor racing. We are going to put a stand in the line here. We're going to try and stay on top of it this year and not have massive back catalogues of these track talks to do. Now, obviously, predominantly we talk about Formula One, and yes, that is what we're here to talk about today. But if in the future we want to talk about other things like world endurance racing, we've done a little bit on GP2 or Formula 2 in the past, and Extremely as well. Please let me know what race series you guys want to have us talk about here on Track Talk, as I'd love to expand the range of what we can do. Let's talk about F1 22, predictions for the season, what's coming up. This is basically just like a pre-season, pre-testing kind of chat, just to talk about what's coming up, different regulations. We've had a big regulation change and some bold words come from teams as they've released their cars. Now, obviously the car launches were a little bit hit and miss because the first few that came out were just basically livery launches. They were the show car that we saw at the beginning of 2020, maybe 2019. I can't remember when we first saw that car. I'll put it on the screen to correct myself. But they were basically just those show cars stickered up and painted to look like the new 2022 cars. However, as we've started to get closer to pre-season testing, shakedowns have been happening, on-track filming days have been happening before the season starts, which means even if cars have been launched as just liveries, we have now kind of got a bit more of a sighter into the actual 2022 cars. There's still a few teams left to release that standard protocol. There's about 2 or 3 teams, I think, that normally do a pre-season rollout at the beginning of the first day before racing or testing gets underway in Catalonia later this week. But yeah, so far I've been very impressed with the cars. They've looked similar enough to the show car, but also very different from each other. And what's also really cool is the difference between each of the cars as well. Now, I'm going to go into the details of all that stuff. I'll do a pre-season test 1 and 2 roundup in the coming weeks. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about the little winglets and all these little bits and bobs that have appeared on the cars, because what's quite likely is what we see today will be different to what we see at the end of the week, to be different to what we see when they get to Bahrain for the second pre-season test and the first race of the season. Oh, it's getting close now. So I'm just going to talk about the change to the regulations. I have spoken about the regulations before in past videos and kind of moaned that I don't think they'll make that much of a difference. I am hoping and feeling like I might be eating my words on this one. The changes to the airflow just make it, basically the aero changes are predominantly based on getting the cars closer to the back of the other cars when they're racing on track. At the moment, because of the way airflow works, and you basically have one car that cuts the hole in the air, and then the air behind that car becomes distributed because there is a car already cutting a hole in the airflow, if you will. So what they've basically done is designed the aero on these cars so that the disrupted air, basically they're trying to reduce the amount of disrupted air behind those cars. So at the moment, at 20 meters behind, the effect on the car is a 35% loss of downforce. They're hoping to drop that to 4% with these new aero regs. Now, I hadn't heard those numbers before, but dear Lord, if that is true and they do manage to get a reduction of 31% of loss of downforce if you're following a car from behind, that jumps up to 18 as you get closer, but even that's a drop down from 45%. So they're talking big numbers here, and if that is true and if that is what we actually get, we are going to see closer racing. You're not going to see these things that we have seen in the past where cars kind of get close for a couple of laps and then have to back off because it's killing their tyres. So hopefully this does mean closer racing, which hopefully means more attacking, and hopefully means a bit more competition and a bit more exciting races, though 2021 did deliver a pretty good and exciting season. The wheels are also different, the tyres, wheels, whatever. They are now 18 inches versus 13. They also now have what's called a wheel cover, which is not been seen on F1 cars, I don't think, ever before. But basically where you used to be able to see the spokes of the wheel, you now can't because there's like a dish on top of the spokes of that wheel, which cover that. That's called a wheel cover. There's also little winglets on top of the tyres at the front of the car. This is all to do with the reduction of the disruption of air behind the cars, making it easier for cars to be racing on top of each other. We also have E10 biofuel, which I put in my car, so that's pretty cool to see. As Formula One try and take their steps towards sustainability, However, just to quell on that point, we also have a 23 race calendar, which is ridiculous, by the way. Quite a few races this year. Amazingly, we finish a lot earlier than we did last year as well, which is surprising. But along with this 23 race calendar, we have the impact of financial pay versus environmental care. Care's maybe a bit harsh, but what was discussed when the 2021 regulations were announced in 2019, or again whenever that was, when these regulations were supposed to come in, basically before the dreaded C word came along and messed everything up for the last couple of years. This was supposed to be a thing where they geographically plotted the races, so the whole F1 circus kind of traveled around the world rather than did this. Now obviously there's a whole element of which tracks want to pay more, and some tracks pay for exclusivity to start or end the season. Some tracks have certain weekends they want to race on. Finances are so much of a factor, which is why we do not have a nice coherent traveling across the World Series. We are still going all over the place, so hopefully in the future that will change, but quite frankly I don't think it will. I think that's something we're kind of stuck with now. In the pre-season launches, we've had some bold, big words coming out from teams. McLaren and Ferrari kind of making it seem that they're in business this year, so we will see if their money goes where their mouth is come the first race of the season, but definitely two teams to keep an eye out on. Obviously, McLaren running the Mercedes engine, which is by far still, I think, the best engine on the grid. We'll see they have a very different aero package to the Mercedes. Also, the other Mercedes runners, they have different. What I think is incredible is like the body shape, the air intakes, the little winglets that you're allowed now, because that's quite restricted where you can actually have those little winglets. All of those kind of factors are very different from car to car. And I think it's going to be interesting, especially to see these teams that are running the same engines, how their aero package then either gives them an advantage or disadvantage. There are definitely two teams to keep an eye on. Also, Red Bull and Mercedes, of course, our reigning world champions and our reigning driver world champion coming in strong as well. I think they're going to be the four at the front. I hope they're going to be the four at the front. I did say this at the end of last year, and I'm going to repeat it. If that is the case, and we have 4 teams fighting for the front, this season is going to be amazing. I'm saying it now. You heard it here first. Well, you probably didn't hear it here first, but you heard it here. This is me saying it, and I hope not to eat my words on that one. One thing, though, about Red Bull, which is a tiny bit frustrating, is it has been announced since the end of last season, since the last time I did one of these, that Honda is still sticking around to help Red Bull with their engine, which means this whole engine freeze for the next 4 years is completely pointless, because everybody has access to the exact same facilities they did last year and the year before and the year before. So I don't know, obviously everyone still has the engine freeze, and just because Honda's come back doesn't mean Red Bull can do anything else that other people can't, but it's just a bit of a weird one to have this engine freeze in place because Honda didn't want anything to do with it. It's almost like Honda have gone, oh, but you won last year, so we'd like to keep our name in the pie, so we're just going to hover around on the edges, and if you win again, we can kind of jump on the bandwagon. I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit harsh, maybe that's just the way it goes, but that for sure is kind of how it feels. It's a little bit bittersweet, that one, and I'm not really happy about it, but you know, that's the way of the world. Victories and success bring along financial gains, and that's kind of what the whole sport is about. I'm kind of only top lining here because I'm going to be doing some pre-season testing videos as well, in which we'll talk a lot more about the cars, a lot more about what they look like, because at that point we will have actual images of the actual cars and all 10 of them, not just a few and some that are livery and some are not. So that's why I'm kind of talking about the cars in detail themselves. But I thought this would just be a nice little video to quickly jump on in, say I'm back and I'm planning on staying back and staying on top of it this year. So let's hope we can do that together. But I am super looking forward to the beginning of the 2022 Formula One season. I hope you are too. Please let me know down in the comment box below all your thoughts, feelings and opinions about what we've seen so far for the 2022 cars, what you think of the regulations, how you think they're actually going to perform versus how they're being predicted to perform. Do we think my initial thought of, well, I don't think it's going to make much difference, is actually going to stand true? I'm kind of retracting this statement myself, but I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment box below, and I will continue this conversation down there with you. But for now, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been an absolute blast, as always. If you enjoyed this video, go show that like button some good old-fashioned love. And if you want to support the channel, go hit subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss next time I upload a video. Stay awesome, and I will see you all in the next video! K2 better deliver how it's promising to, or I'm going to be really mad about it.